Well, we got, must have been the only pair where the female swan was literally a fowl version of a hussy. And she would
and
not.
fowl is F-O-W-L in this case, right?
Yes.
Okay. So she was a bit of a hussy, was she?
She was.
This was to tell the husbands it's time to go home.
Oh, I remember that.
And of course, you'll always see the stork flying around with the babies in the net.
So this is how the stork delivered the babies.
Yeah, that's right. It's also good for weighing your fish as well.
Betty Miller was first, for she runs it all. So then Betty O'Reilly.
So she's Betty 1.
Yes, and Betty O'Reilly's Betty 2.
Betty 2.
She's been in it longer, but I'm only doing it 3 or 4 years.
Right.
So naturally I have to get in at the bottom. I'm Betty 3.
He's here 24/7.
Have I said to you, if you did as much on this house as you did out in that street, it would fit you better? Does that sound familiar?
I've heard that a lot of times.
It would take an inordinate amount of time if I were to recite the long list of regional, national and international awards and plaudits that justify this place being styled the Garden Village of Ulster. So you might be forgiven for thinking that November must be the wrong time of year to be visiting such a place. Well, up to a point. Granted, I've missed the full glory of the summer blooms, the overflowing window boxes and hanging baskets. But the people who have put this village firmly to the fore of floral competitions live here all year round. And the toil and effort that goes into keeping it to the fore is a never-ending task that demands commitment and pride and the kind of community spirit that must always be in season, even in the month of November. Welcome to the village of Broughshane, on the banks of the River Braid, in the heart of County Antrim. A fiery winter sun sheds dramatic light on the landscape surrounding Broughshane, whose dominant feature is a remnant of a volcanic past that occurred many millions of years before anything here had a name. We have called it Slemish Mountain in recent millennia and have placed St. Patrick on its slopes as an enslaved swineherd during his teenage years. Here, we are told, he prayed and communed with nature. The wonder of it is he didn't succumb to druidic fancies, because they would have worshipped the same sun that sets on the same mountain today. The name Broughshane is derived from the Irish for Shane's dwelling, the Shane in question being Shane MacBrien MacPhelim O'Neill, ruler of Lower Clandyboy from 1595 to 1617, and the same man responsible for Shane's castle. A tiny village on the site of that dwelling grew in size and importance as a result of the plantation of Ulster in the early 1600s, when it was settled in the main by Scottish Presbyterians. In the 18th and 19th centuries, Broughshane prospered as a centre of the linen trade, and as you can see, the physical legacy of that industry, which might have been lazily gathering rust, has been judiciously enlisted as an adornment to the village's modern environment. It's an environment about which local people care very deeply, simply because it has such a profound effect on the quality of life they and their families enjoy. And herein lies the open secret of Broughshane's success over the years in best kept awards and tidy town competitions, and on the international stage, the Entente Floral. The modern population have long ago learnt the transformative power of collective effort. And it's an effort that has to be expended, even now in wintry November, by volunteers such as Leonard Fenton and Avril Kidd. Does the rest of the population not take a hand on this as well?
Well, they do. Well, they have over the years.
Right.
I must admit there's a lot of the older hands gone, or maybe not able anymore.
I understand.
But we've a great young team, always on a Saturday morning.
Right.
Young fellas, there could be 6 of them come there. And
is that right?
look, they're marvellous, you know.
But it's good to see young
help
ones
us to
involved.
cut the
Doing
grass.
Edinburgh Awards and that type of thing, involved from Edinburgh, and then they're...
But you have won, in this village you've won, I think you've won more awards than anywhere else.
Yes.
Would that be fair to say?
Well, it is.
No boasting or anything?
No boasting, no,
Right.
no. You know, you got to keep on top of it all the time, you know. Even tidiness litter.
Yeah.
That's another thing the judges...
So there's no point in having beautiful flowers.
Oh
if
no,
the streets are dirty.
and these girls here weed and they scrape the street there and brush that street, and it's unbelievable. Well, I couldn't be doing what they're doing because...
Well, there's 5 of us, and we would go out in the morning time, maybe from 9 o'clock to 12 or something like that. So you can do a wee bit of work in a few hours.
So you
And the cracks mighty as well.
well, that's what I was going to ask you.
And could I just mention Joe, I think that's right, he just passed away there lately, an old stalwart Joe McClintock. He was 101, was he?
It was 101.
And he had been the main man then,
He started it all.
doing the flowers, all you know. And the two Wilson brothers, the twin brother Wilsons,
Right.
Sandy and Ian. When I started, I'm 20 years past in this improvement committee.
Right.
And it used to be on a Saturday morning, the people all gathered. You'll maybe not know where that is, the church entry. You probably come up the church entry.
I know what you mean.
I seen 20 people standing there on a Saturday morning with shovels over their shoulder and spades.
Ready for
And
work.
Ian used to jump out of the car. He was the chairman then. Oh, lads, now you know what to do. No, I want you to tell us what to do. And he was 2 here, 3 there, 4 there.
You're out of 20 years. I'm not going to ask you, Arvel. It would be ungentlemanly to ask you how long you're out of.
Yeah.
Not
But
just as long.
Not just as long. But you need, it strikes me, I mean, you're talking about you going out cleaning up the streets, you know, when men and women be in cleaning their own house and all that kind of stuff. But I mean, what I was going to say, you need a lot of time.
We need a
Surely.
lot of time too. We do.
So is it mainly...
Well, my wife's a good person. Because no other woman would honestly put up with me. You know,
Leonard's
hours
here in the summertime. He's here 24/7.
If I said to you, if you did as much in this house as you did out in that
Yeah,
street,
exactly.
it would fit you better. Does that sound
I've
familiar?
heard that a lot of times.
Anyway,
Yeah.
listen, this is a great place you have here. You have big greenhouses over here, and you have these tunnels here. And what are we looking at? What kind of plants are we looking at
These
here
are the
now?
polyanthus.
Polyanthus.
Yes,
All of these are polyanthus?
These are all polyanthus, aye.
Right, and you put them out this time of the year?
Yes.
Yes.
So now
And those
November.
can stand the frost, you know.
They
Those
can stand the frost.
I've seen them sitting solid on the ground. You think, oh, those are
And covered
those
nice
are
and all the
fin-
rest
oh
of it.
yes, aye.
And they
I
come
mean,
back
they-
again.
oh, they
Oh,
will.
yes.
Right. So, the immediate task in hand, one of a multitude in the months ahead, is the planting out of thousands of polyanthus plants and winter pansies, both of which are a lot tougher than they look or sound. That's a job that Leonard now does expertly with a smile. But they also serve who only stand and weed. Averil's weed busters I'm talking about, and I know what she means when she says the crack can be mighty, because this is one of Broughane's 3 Bettys. Betty Shaw, in this case, whose sense of humour is renowned, thankfully, because I began by insulting her botanical knowledge. Would you know the difference between a weed and a flower? Because
Of course.
it strikes me that there's stuff on there that I would not know the difference at all.
No,
Are these all flowers here as well?
Yes, those are all flowers, but you'll pick off all the dead leaves
All the dead
and all
stuff.
that stuff there. And
Right.
these people have all the planting done.
Right.
Then we take over and we keep it nice and tidy.
Who's we in this case?
Well, we're about half a dozen. We have the 3 Bettys.
3 Bettys. So you're one of the 3 Bettys?
I am number 3, Betty 3.
Do you
Not by,
seriously?
not by grading, like, it's just it's how we joined the... Betty Miller was first, for she runs it all. So
Right.
then Betty Wiley...
So she's Betty 1?
Yes, and Betty Wiley's Betty 2.
Betty 2.
She's been in it longer, but I'm only doing it 3 or 4 years.
Right.
So naturally I have to come in at the bottom. I'm Betty 3.
Betty 3. So what did you do
But
with
it
your...
also happens when we're out talking, which one are you addressing? So we have to call each other if you're going to ask them a question.
You
Which,
serious?
Betty 1 or Betty 2 or Betty 3?
You call each other that
We
seriously?
do, we do.
Right,
And we
right.
ring up to say, this is Betty 2 here. Can you weed this afternoon or can you weed in tomorrow morning?
Do you all have the same accent as well? It's very hard to
aye,
tell your
Broughshane,
voices
a
apart.
Broughshane
Broughshane
yes,
accent,
yes,
okay.
yes. We all understand each other.
So what got you interested in doing that then?
Well, I was born and reared here, and I'm in most of the organisations here,
Aye.
and I'm going to end up here.
Right.
And if we plot here, so I'm going to end up here.
And you're going to make sure
Definitely.
that wee plot's well weeded, in other
Yes,
words,
yes,
as well.
yes. Oh,
But seriously, the job that you do is a serious one, isn't it? Because
It is.
it's
And it's awful. It's good crack. It's good fun. You know, we catch up with each other's news, and we catch up with the local news, and we have a very nice tea break. We take turns at bringing tea and biscuits, and we chat. We catch up.
and you take the odd wheat out as well when you're doing
Oh,
all
we
these
do that.
things.
Oh, we work hard.
Right.
We work very hard.
Right.
Especially in the footpath, or, you know, the paving, the pathways and all. You know that where they get in between the slabs?
Do you actually do all that
we
stuff
have
as
to-
well?
Yes, I have some photographs of us down on hands and knees pulling out those weeds.
So that's the secret. Sore backs, big smiles, plenty of tea breaks, and of course, as many Bettys as you can muster, if you want to be best of the best. I'll be reaching for 1 or 2 more superlatives in describing some truly outstanding Broughshane endeavours when we come back. Stroll along Broughane's main street and you will see that much of its architectural heritage has been tastefully and seamlessly woven into the fabric of the modern village. So much so that in order to appreciate the continuity of habitation spanning several centuries here, it helps to be mindful of the historical events that laid the founds for what you see around you. Many of the descendants of those earliest Scottish Presbyterian settlers I mentioned would later figure prominently in the United Irishmen, and the aftermath of the rebellion in 1798 saw punishments meted out in the form of executions and floggings from the Broughshane courthouse, which serves nowadays as the Orange Hall. A more cheerful reminder of the past, perhaps, is the Thatch Inn, a listed building said to have been constructed originally as a planter's house as early as the 17th century. Houston's mill, powered by the waters of the Braid River, used to scotch flax and make spades and paper before being converted into a community and enterprise centre in the year 2000. But the function of this building remains much as it was in 1765 when it was built by Charles O'Neill of Shane's Castle. It's called St. Patrick's Church of Ireland, a reminder, if required, that you're practically in the shadow of that rough cradle of Irish Christianity, Slemish Mountain. But it actually brings to my mind a number of different locations.
Down on the shores of Strangford Lough, in the town of Killyleagh, I encountered the story of Hans Sloane, whose boyhood fascination with collecting things led eventually to the foundation of the British Museum. Well, Broughshane can claim a similar distinction. Here in the graveyard of St. Patrick's Church of Ireland is the final resting place of Canon John Granger, who was rector here from 1869 until his death in 1891. And he too spent his childhood wandering the countryside like a young magpie, enraptured by the natural environment all around him, picking up and taking home everything he found, and he remained an avid collector throughout his life. Seashells, fossils, natural history specimens, and eventually antiquities, books and works of art. He bequeathed his massive collection on his death to the Belfast Corporation. And even though he never married or had any children, he did have progeny of a sort, because he's known to this day as the father of the Ulster Museum.
And you won't need to file any paternity suits to discover the parentage of this collection, because Dr. Tony Redmond is unquestionably the progenitor of the Broughshane Museum and a close relative of many another community initiative besides. The museum is located on the upper floor of Broughshane House, a fairly recently and quite handsomely appointed facility on the main street, which is the hub of much activity aimed at improving the quality of life of all of Broughane's citizenry. Tony Redmond's collection reflects his own fascination with every aspect of the social, cultural, commercial and political life of the local population going back many generations. And as a doctor, of course, he would have had a hand, quite literally, in helping some of those generations take their first breath of Broughane's bracing air.
The items here came from the cottage hospital in Ballymena, where, like a lot of other GPs, we delivered babies up to 1990. And then the government, in their wisdom, closed the Waveney Hospital and closed the cottage hospital.
Right.
But this was fantastic. You can see they were all weighed in pounds and ounces.
Was this for weighing babies? Are you serious?
That's right, that's for babies. Yeah,
I thought that was for weighing out potatoes or something like that.
Well, you could do that as well, of course, if the odd.
So the babies were put in this. I kind of remember
This is the
that.
last baby been weighed here on the last day. It was one of the saddest days for me.
For you personally?
I loved the people. And I'd like to sort of say that these are the types of nurses that we had. Sister Sheena Adams knit these for her baby, she called them. She was looked after the nursery.
So she did this when she was on duty or
she was
off
on
duty?
duty. On duty. She just loved her work. It was a lovely atmosphere to work in.
And she loved babies, obviously. And these are wee sods. These ones were never given over. Otherwise you wouldn't have had them, I suppose.
They didn't fit me, unfortunately.
But this all refers to that time.
And then this was to tell the husbands it's time to go home.
I remember that. Right.
And of course, you'll always see the stork flying around with the babies in the net.
So this is how the stork delivered the babies.
Yeah, that's right. It's also good for weighing your fish as well.
Oops, something.
Okay, not to worry. That's just for listening to Fetal Heart. I can never hear anything.
Tony Redmond's museum is much more than an exercise in nostalgia or a display of obsolescence. It's a record of continuity and a celebration of heritage, which he hopes will instill community pride in present and future generations. That strong sense of community, which is a palpable thing in Broughshane, took shape for Tony personally when in 1970 they took over an old redundant potato factory which had been used during the Second World War.
This potato factory was one of 5 in Ulster that were used during the war to supplement the grain. It took 5 bags of potatoes to make 1 bag of potato meal.
So they actually made a kind of flour out of
Flour
potatoes.
out of it.
To make, was that go on to make a kind of bread then? Or
That's
whatever?
right. If you're starving, you'd eat anything.
Well, absolutely. Yeah.
So anyway, this one was finished in 1946 and was lying derelict in an asbestos building, and the children were playing in it. So we rented the place for 1 shilling a year from the Ballymena Commission, and they were good. They allowed us to do what we like. As the community developed, we took down part of the building and made it into a sort of community centre. Anyway, that became our base, and we raised money to develop it. And
so that was the start of what you have here,
preschool playgroup, senior citizens, youth club, bowling club, pigeon club, everything. As you know, then the village improvement people came along, and we won the Entente Floral. These are European awards, British awards. We've won everything that's going.
And was that important to morale for people?
Oh, it was. People develop pride. See, you're giving people roots. This is what I'm trying to do here. These are the roots of people. Your family, you'll find some connection with people you know. We mentioned some people here earlier. And this is what museums should be, and also to reflect change in society. And to say our motto, as I said earlier, is preserving tomorrow's history today.
And you don't know what's going to be significant in the future, sure you don't really?
Absolutely not.
Right. So from those kind of origins you have now, what has...
34 different affiliated organisations.
Here in this located in this building? Right?
We're an umbrella organisation. You know, for instance, we've a tourist meeting about St. Patrick tonight. We're going to reclaim him.
right.
Down Patrick.
Bring him back to Flemish.
Got him from Down Patrick.
Yeah, bring him back to Flemish.
That's right.
The Broughshane Museum would repay many hours of browsing by visitor and native alike. And the same could most definitely be said for yet another community enterprise just off the main street in what used to be a swampy area created by an overspill of the River Braid. Broughshane people do transformations rather well, I've discovered, and nowadays that swampy area is the Broughshane Waterfowl Park, hosting a quite extraordinary range of feathered exotica that have become a magnet for children of all ages, for volunteer helpers like Robert Black, whose house backs onto this area, for local artists like Nigel Allison, who simply has to cross the road to be in painter's heaven, for anyone really who enjoys watching birds, their gliding grace or their comic bewilderment at the sudden hardening of the water this frosty morning. Don't worry, Michelle Baird informs me, that'll be gone soon. We're good at transformations in Broughshane.
Initially, this bit here was the only bit of water. The rest was mud and just swampland. It was absolutely desperate.
So go back how many years? About 7 years?
About 7, 8 years now.
Describe this area for me 7 years ago then.
It was not used. It was completely full of rats. The grass and the nettles were up to here.
Right.
Down there was completely swamped. People just didn't use it at all.
So it was not a pleasant place at all?
It wasn't. People stayed away from it.
And this was out the back of all of these houses?
It was, yeah.
Right. So who was the genius who looked at it and said, we could transform this into something beautiful?
I don't think it was any one genius.
Really?
I think it was a case of looking at what was available and thinking, well, what could we do? And of course, water. You immediately think, well, we could put birds in it. So then we thought, well, if we put birds in the pond at this end, cleaned around here up for people to come in to see them, then that would give some sort of resource for the people in the area.
Right, and then birds, where did that come? I mean, I don't know where birds come from, but these ones here are exotic birds, a lot of them, right?
Yes, a lot of them. There's a mixture. Our first ambition was to look and think, well, have ducks anywhere.
Yeah.
You can go to anywhere at all, see a lot of ducks or clatter ducks. However, we thought, well, what can we do that's different? So we started off by looking at swans based on one of our local volunteers who wanted swans.
I always wanted to see a swan in the river, kind of thing. Was
Yes,
that it?
that was his dream, he said.
Right.
So 7 different species of swan were duly assembled from reputable breeders. Australian black swans, Polish mute swans, as opposed to our native mute swans, whose participation would have to be entirely voluntary, Hooper swans, black-necked swans, Coscarobas, the smallest of them all, trumpeters, and from the tundra, whistler swans, who, according to Michelle, had no breeding whatsoever.
As you know, swans are supposed to come in pairs and stay together for life. Well, we got, must have been the only pair where the female swan was literally a fowl version of a hussy. And she would
and
not.
fowl is F-O-W-L in this case, right? Okay. So she was a bit of a hussy, was she?
She was. She wouldn't stay with her mate.
Okay.
She took a fancy to Bruce, the Polish male.
Right.
And she went and followed him and caused all sorts of angst. And if you moved her, she screamed like a banshee the whole time.
Get away.
Absolutely horrendous. You
Right,
couldn't live near her.
So in 7 years, you have totally transformed this place. It must be great for the local children and the local adults as well, for that
It
matter.
does. Well, we started off, we had to, as part of the grant conditions for here, we had to prove numbers of people coming through.
I see.
So we were fitted with a people counter and we recorded, it was 1,400 people on average a week.
That's brilliant,
A week,
isn't it?
and that's without advertising.